Just 2 months ago, Malta's most famous investigative journalist, Daphne Caruana Galizia, was assassinated in a car bombing. She had no shortage of enemies. For years, she targeted top politicians and business leaders, most recently those named in the so-called Panama Papers. My guest here in Valletta is the Deputy Prime Minister, Fearne. Has his government allowed the emergence of a mafia haven? And if so, is it partly responsible for this latest killing? Fearne, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you for having me.
In the aftermath of the killing of Daphne Caruana Galizia, your Prime Minister, Joseph Muscat, described this rather curiously as a wake-up call. 28 bombings in Malta since 2003, and this is a wake-up call. Sounds as though you've slept through a lot of other wake-up calls, doesn't it?
Well, actually, what's happened recently is that in this case particularly, the police have done a very good job, because barely 6 weeks after the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia, the police managed to arraign 3 persons in court last week.
I understand that, but out of the 28 that have happened since 2003, only 26 have remained unsolved, haven't they?
Well, you see, this case in itself gives us confidence that we might actually come back to the other cases and solve those as well.
Well, you've had a lot of outside assistance, haven't you?
Yes, I'm very thankful for that.
But you didn't seem to manage on your own, if you've only solved 2 out of 28.
Well, you see, this case particularly, the Caruana Galizia case, was something very shocking for the nation. I mean, this wasn't no murder is a normal murder, but this was a particularly striking and shocking murder for us. This was a criminal gang trying to bring out a message, trying to give a message that the freedom of expression in Malta is threatened. So we took this very seriously. This was a very grave occurrence.
I understand that, but just 8 days after the killing, the head of the Italian Anti-Mafia Commission warned that the mafia phenomenon, as she called it, was expanding in Malta. Mafia phenomenon. Certain individuals, she said, were finding what she called hospitality to carry out their criminal activities, particularly drug trafficking. Why do you offer hospitality to people like that in Malta?
Absolutely not. I mean, these are unfounded allegations, and
this is the mafia head of the Anti-Mafia Commission. It's not nobody.
No, absolutely. But to my knowledge, she hasn't come forward with any evidence at all. And so it's unfair to say that because somebody says something in the press somewhere else, or anywhere in the world.
So you simply dismiss it?
That's not a question.
The Italian Anti-Mafia Commission talks nonsense.
Well,
this is what you're saying.
You're putting words in my mouth, Tim.
No, but
absolutely, what I'm saying is that Malta is a European country. We are members of the European Union. We have European standards, and we have the rule of law. Nobody is above the law.
Well, do you have European standards?
Yes,
because she complained that you're not cooperating. You're not cooperating.
No, the way to go about things is to go through the normal channels. So the normal channels are the magistrates, and there are very well-known and well-respected magistrates on the island, and they do their work.
But she went through normal channels, and she has requested the names of foreigners, for instance, who bought Maltese passports, currently being sold in return for $650,000 US dollars.
No, I disagree with that. Normal channels don't mean that you can get any information from anywhere just by speaking in a newspaper. There's the rule of law, Malta, as there would be in Italy, as there would be, well, I hope there would be in Italy, and I hope there would be in Germany, in London, wherever.
But why don't you pass on this information that the Anti-Mafia Commission wants? Which is who's bought the passports, what nationality,
because there are rules
and what the names of them are.
Because there are laws in Malta which we need to adhere to. And the laws
but
Malta,
you're a member of the European Club.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to help in the prevention of crime.
And we do, absolutely.
But you're not going to pass on this information which would help in the prevention of crime.
No, you're wrong. Europol were here, and they helped us to solve or at least to arraign people in the case of the Caruana Galizia murder. And in the case that you're talking about, for sure. I mean, we are a European country, we have European standards.
And you're selling passports to people and giving them a backdoor into the European Union, but not passing on that information to the
wrong.
EU.
You're wrong.
This is what they say.
No, you're wrong.
This is what she says.
No,
She's
you're
wrong too.
No, well, I don't know what you're quoting her saying, but I can tell you what you are saying now is wrong. Because our passport scheme, as you call it, it's a private investor scheme really, is approved by the European Commission. It is approved by the European Commission. There's nothing that we are doing which is illegal or which is anywhere
I didn't
out
say
of
it
the
was illegal,
ordinary.
but if law enforcement agencies ask for information, you're not providing it.
Yes, we are. Of course we are.
But why did she say then that you
if the
haven't
local
been
law enforcement
given
agencies-
them, you haven't given them the
the local-
names
no, you're
and the
wrong.
numbers and the nationalities of those who are acquiring these passports,
there is-
non-EU nationals?
No, there is Europol, as you say, and we will cooperate completely, absolutely, 100% with Europol. And if there are any requests that come through Europol, and they are in accordance with Maltese law, then we will go ahead and do that.
Chris Fearne, on top of those concerns from the Italians, your own Chief Justice, Silvio Camilleri, felt the need in October to warn in the strongest possible terms that unless the authorities here carried out their duties impartially, there would be punishment for some and not for others. Instead of the rule of law, he said, we will have the rule of delinquents.
Absolutely.
Why do you think he was warning so strongly about the rule of delinquents here in Malta if everything is, as you say, absolutely fine?
He was speaking in the annual gathering for the judiciary. So he was
Doesn't matter, does it? It's a serious warning. It's a serious warning.
Absolutely, but just let's put it in context. He was talking to the judiciary in that context. And yes, absolutely. Anywhere in the world, if the rule of law isn't covered, then there's a problem. And we pride ourselves in doing this. And
if
nobody is
was
above
fine,
the law.
he wouldn't have given that warning, would he?
Why do you say
He
that?
spoke specifically about a rule of delinquents.
No, absolutely not.
The danger of a rule of delinquents here in Malta.
You see? The Maltese law states clearly that, and no, there's nobody above the law, nobody, Prime Minister downwards. And there have been allegations against people in Parliament, people in Cabinet even, and they have been taken very seriously. Why not? We can accuse people, but at the end of the day, it has to be proven in court. Barely 6 weeks after this most shocking murder that we've had, this Caruana Galizia murder, we've actually arraigned people in court. I mean, this is probably a record.
But you're not
in Europe.
pretending that is going to get to the
Well, that is a very significant development.
It may be
Yes,
significant.
absolutely, it is very
But you
significant.
don't think that
and
the
the
three
police
people
need to be, well, we'll have to wait and
are
see.
responsible for this whole murder?
Well, why
Who
don't
ordered
you-
the murder?
Well, let's wait and see what the compilation of evidence brings up. I mean, let's wait and see what happens.
This
is
against the
what happens
background-
in a country with rule of law. You wait for courts to give you their answer.
Well, a lot of
You
people
don't-
think it's a very
No,
permissive
well, you're very
environment
wrong at
towards
that.
the
You see,
rule of law.
you don't extrapolate and make allegations facts.
I'm
You
not
have to wait for.
extrapolating. There was a
you have to wait
resolution
for the
last
courts.
month from the European Parliament
Yes.
which says that serious crimes are not being investigated by the police in Malta. Do you take
Well,
that seriously, that
European-
allegation seriously?
Any European Parliament is, of course, free to comment, and we always take anything the European Parliament and any parliamentarians, be they Maltese or be they European. Seriously, of course we do. We don't always have to agree with what
You
what
fell out
people
badly
say.
with a recent delegation that came here. The Prime
No,
Minister
I
questioned
disagree.
whether it
Prime
was
Minister
useful
met.
for them to come.
The Prime Minister met with the delegation.
Yeah, and then questioned whether it was useful for them to have come because they appeared to have made up their minds anyway.
Well, yes, you see, because that is a bit unfair. If you make up your mind before you actually start investigating, that can be a bit unfair. But no, we take anybody's comments seriously as long as they are fair comment.
Do you take seriously that in the Transparency International Corruption Index for last year, you fell to an all-time low, which was 47th place? Do you take that seriously as well?
Well, I agree. When there
That's not a
are
proud
when there are
moment for you, is
concerns,
it?
no, when there are concerns, then yes, we need to look at this. In fact, what we've been doing over the last few months, since the elections, is that we've actually given and giving. At the moment, we're discussing this in Parliament, and I spoke in Parliament about this last week. We're giving stronger rights to the Maltese press. For the first time since the statute books have been written, we're removing criminal libel. This has been always since the World War, criminal libel here in Malta. We are removing that from the statute book.
I understand, but your place in that index,
because absolutely,
so 47th place, goes right against what you've been telling people in various interviews, doesn't it? You said in an interview in July that transparency and accountability reinforce the fact that not only are we governing correctly, but also we are seen to be doing it. If you've fallen to 47th place in the Corruption Perceptions Index, you're not being seen to do it.
We are reacting to that because, as you say, we know it's not just doing it, we have to be seen to be doing it. And we are reacting to this positively. We take criticism, and this is one way of doing it.
Chris Fearne, just half an hour before Daphne Caruana Galizia walked out of her house and got into her car for the last time, she wrote in her blog, "There are crooks everywhere you look now.
Yes.
The situation is desperate."
Absolutely.
And her murder proved it, didn't it? That's the unpalatable truth.
No, I don't think she was referring to the criminal gang that, well, I don't know what she was referring to be honest with you, but what she'd been talking about and writing about for the last 2 months before her brutal murder was the situation with the new leader of the opposition. The new leader of the opposition, Adrian Delia, had been criticized very ferociously by Caruana Galizia over the last 2 months.
She criticized everybody. She criticized your government.
Absolutely, yes. And she has a right to do that.
Didn't single out the opposition.
Well, no, she didn't. You're right. She criticized practically everybody on the island, as she had the right to do. And people who felt aggrieved had the right to take her to court,
so
as
this
you would
was
do
a
in a normal
murder.
country. No, absolutely not.
No?
No, you're saying that...
She took on you, the politicians, didn't she?
No, you're saying that what she wrote was connected to the murder. I'm saying it not necessarily the case.
How do you know that?
You're saying that. But you're saying that it wasn't. I'm saying it's not necessarily the case. We'll have to wait and see what the courts say.
But you were her targets along with business.
Absolutely, yes.
Business leaders.
And when people felt that they were aggrieved, they took her to court, as you would do in a normal country where the rule of law is king. And the rule of law in Malta...
And one of your number decided it had to stop. No, someone on this island decided it had to stop.
This is a very unfair allegation, and I'm surprised that you're doing this. Well, you're saying
someone on this island,
that the politician...
No, I'm not saying... I said politicians and business leaders.
This is extremely unfair of you, Mr.
I said politicians and business. Someone decided it had to stop.
There are 3 people who are arraigned in court. In any country where there is the rule of law, you wait for the court to give you the decision, and this is what you're going to do. Any allegations on your part otherwise is extremely unfair.
Her family doesn't have faith in the investigation here. Isn't it time you called for an independent international investigation?
Well, you see, you just said that we had the foreign FBI, Europol, the Dutch police force were giving us a hand, the Finnish police force were giving a hand. These are all international organizations. Europol is a European organization.
But a full investigation. In full international investigation.
Full. You see, the investigation is being led by a magistrate, and the Caruana Galizia family have confidence in that magistrate, particular magistrate, Magistrate Vella, and as a government, we have absolutely full confidence in the magistrates and in the law courts here in Malta.
Plenty of your colleagues loathed her, didn't they, Daphne Caruana Galizia? They really loathed her, didn't they?
I wouldn't say that, no.
In February this year, the Minister of Justice, Owen Bonici, called her extreme.
Yes.
Everest Bartolo, the Education Minister, accused her of lying and attacking people who were sick. Yes. At the time of her death, she was facing more than 40 lawsuits, including one from your Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And why not?
So you went after her with a vengeance, didn't you?
No. You see, in a country where there is the rule of law, journalists are allowed to say whatever they feel like. But then, of course, if they say something which people feel aggrieved about, whoever feels aggrieved about has the right to take her to court.
But one of her sisters said...
And there have been cases where she was acquitted, and there have been cases where she was found to be guilty.
As one of her sisters put it, the libel suits were part of a wider strategy to shut her up. They seemed designed to eat up her time and her money.
No, I disagree. You see, if you want to stand by the rule of law, and we do, then there has to be freedom of expression. But of course, people who are spoken about, who are written about, have a right to reply, and to reply in court. Why not?
But one of your ministers, Chris Cardona, went so far as to get a court order to freeze her bank accounts so as to guarantee she'd be able to pay up if she lost.
Well, that is
what happened to the presumption of innocence?
Well, you see, this is what always happens everywhere in the world when there is a criminal or when there is a civil case. Then the person who is feeling aggrieved has the right to ask for a garnishee order. This happens everywhere in the world. Surely you're not quite criticizing that, are you?
So many people, though, had a motive to order her killing in this close-knit community, didn't they, where there was a good chance of getting away with violent crime. 26 out of 28 bombings hadn't been solved.
I come back to this, you see, because I say this again. Barely 6 weeks after Caruana Galizia was murdered, the police are arraigning people in court even as we speak, this week. So surely what you are saying is doesn't stand. Had we said this straight away,
but
we are not going to leave
that
any stone unturned to... Yeah,
even if these three were convicted, you're not going to tell me that this was the
So you think this is it's not a significant development?
I didn't say it wasn't significant.
Well, it's a very significant...
But it's not the whole story, is it? You're not going to claim to me it's the whole story.
No, absolutely it isn't.
That you've cracked the crime, you've solved the crime.
In this case?
Yeah. Is this what you're telling me?
Let's wait and see what the courts come up with. Let's wait and see.
Minister, in August, Daphne Caruana Galizia turned her fire on you, didn't she, personally? She claimed you had failed to inquire why the government had signed what she called a shady deal for public hospital management with an untested new outfit called Vital's Global Healthcare. The shadow health minister said the deal stank of corruption. Why did you sign such an enormous deal with a company that was totally untested in this field of hospital management?
That you are saying that this was me personally, I didn't sign this deal myself. So
no, but the government. The government signed it.
Yeah,
the government.
Just to make that clear.
No, I wasn't saying you personally.
No. Yes, the government signed this deal, and it's happening at the moment. There are hospitals being developed. There's Bart's Medical School, who are here in Malta, and they've started the course. We've got first-year medical students training on the island with Bart's. And the hospitals are running.
But were there no companies available in the world that had actually run a hospital before?
Well, this was a public tender. It was a public request for proposals. There were a number of companies who applied, and the adjudicating board eventually chose...
one that had no track record in this field at all.
Well, you see,
odd, isn't it?
There's Partners Healthcare International, who run the Boston hospitals, who are also involved.
But this actual company, Vitals, had never run a hospital before.
Well, Vitals itself, to my knowledge, no.
No.
But they're running.
So you choose
now.
For this contract, this hugely valuable contract.
Well, again,
€2 billion over 30 years.
This isn't something that a minister decides. There's an adjudicating board which sees all the proposals and then chooses the proposal according to merit.
In October 2016, you released a heavily redacted copy of your agreement with Vitals in Parliament. It wasn't until the full document was leaked to the Times of Malta that the exact terms were visible to the public. Why did you seek to restrict access to the terms of this agreement?
Well, part of the agreement, as you would expect in any other commercially sensitive agreement, need to be redacted on advice of lawyers, because there are commercial sensitivities which of course need to be protected. So
what damage was done by having the full contract leaked?
Well, you say it was the full contract leaked. I haven't seen this full contract, what the Times have. I don't know what they have.
They had details which you didn't originally supply.
Well, I don't know what details the Times have. Maybe you know more than I
A company managing 3 state hospitals being paid €188,000 a day on the basis of no experience whatsoever in the field.
No, they are running the hospitals, and the monies that you mentioned are not legal, not management fees. They are fees to run the actual hospital. So they are salaries for doctors and for nurses. They are expenses for medicines. They are expenses for keeping people and operating theatres. So
it doesn't stink of corruption as
No, absolutely not. Absolutely.
The case that has caused you most problems began in April last year with revelations from the so-called Panama Papers, the leak of these 11 million documents from the Panamanian law firm. Who should be named in them but 2 senior officials in your government, former Energy Minister Konrad Mizzi and the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Keith Schembri, both of whom, I should emphasize, insist they did absolutely nothing wrong.
They do, yes.
Mizzi, it transpired, had set up a trust in New Zealand without telling the Commissioner of Inland Revenue. Schembri had a company in Panama, which the Prime Minister Joseph Muscat only found out about in the media. Now, instead of firing the 2 of them, which the Prime Minister Joseph Muscat talked about doing, he told a local newspaper, under normal circumstances, they would have had to resign, but I also needed them to implement certain projects. They're not just friends, which in this case is irrelevant. I knew that speculation would mount on my decision to retain them, but I put the country first in order to deliver the power station and other things. Pretty brazen, isn't it? And pretty permissive. You had two people who, at least on the surface, should have resigned, but the Prime Minister kept them on. Close friends of his. He kept them on.
As we've said already, nobody is above the rule of law here in Malta.
Except for these two.
No, they're not. You see, again, you're wrong here. There are magistrates who are actually investigating this. So, and it's an ongoing process. If any of the allegations are founded, if there is fact after these allegations, then yes, not only will they have to resign, they will have to face the decisions by the court.
The public is supposed to accept at face value that the Prime Minister's friendship with these two was of no consequence whatsoever.
Well, again, you see, that's why there are courts here in Malta. People are tried in court. They are not tried on a television program, in all due respect.
But what we have is a clear breach of cabinet rules and tax rules suddenly explained away as the best thing for the country by keeping these people on.
No, absolutely not. They are being investigated by a magistrate. So
you make up the rules as you go along. You make up the rules.
No, absolutely, we don't. You see, that's what we don't do. We don't make up the rules as we go along. We stick to what the rule of law states. And the rule of law states that you are investigated by a magistrate, not by the media.
In March 2016, the Prime Minister said that Mitzi had paid a fine for his factual omission. It turned out he hadn't. The Prime Minister corrected himself the next day. Has Mr. Mitzi now paid his fine?
Paid the fine?
Yes.
What for?
For not telling the Commissioner of Income Taxes about the foundation in New Zealand.
I'm not aware of that, no, I don't know. I don't know the details of that.
Or is that something else the public is not entitled to know?
No, absolutely, I don't know the details of that myself. It doesn't mean it hasn't happened, or I don't know.
The Prime Minister said that Keith Schembri would resign if criminal proceedings were started against him.
Yes.
But instead of going on with that, we now discover this year leaks from the state's financial watchdog, the Financial Intelligence Analysis Unit, showed that in this case they had sufficient evidence to conclude a reasonable suspicion of money laundering.
No, the FIU denied that.
They have denied it?
They have.
The European Union drew attention to this. So they had no suspicions.
The FIU have denied that there's a report because what you are referring to is that there was a person who said this. Who said this in the media, that he has knowledge that there was something which was kept secret. The FIU are saying that there was no such completed report, that there might have been a draft that this person is referred to. But again, you see, there are courts, and if there is evidence, then they should go to the court. There is a magistrate who is investigating all these dealings, and they should go to the magistrate.
And the magistrate wanted...
And we will go along with whatever the court say.
I mean,
we don't have an option. It's not something that we choose to go along or
not.
This is what happens in our country.
The magistrate in Fallujah decided to launch an inquiry, didn't he? But the Prime Minister, along with 6 others, goes to court to try to shut down this inquiry before
they have a right
it starts.
to do in court. Yes,
if you wanted to get to the truth, why did the Prime Minister go along to shut down the very inquiry that would have delivered the truth?
This is something that needs
why?
No, but this is something, you see...
And you say you're open and transparent.
The Prime Minister hasn't shut down the inquiry. The Prime Minister has...
But he went along to ask for it
he asked in court, because and he has a right to do that. Why not?
Why?
I mean, this is the way...
But if he wants to find the truth, why shut down the inquiry that might deliver it?
But you see, he hasn't shut it down. He has asked for...
He hasn't succeeded yet, but he asked to shut it down.
Yes, and he
has
a right...
That's not a Prime Minister who wants to get to the truth, is it?
He has a right to go to court and defend himself in court. Surely you're not saying the Prime Minister, because he is Prime Minister, has the same rights that any citizen has to go to court and defend his name. He's done that.
But he's not defending his name. He's trying to shut down the inquiry before the inquiry delivers a verdict.
You see, there's a lot of
He doesn't even want to know the truth, does he?
No, you're wrong. And he hasn't shut it down just by decreeing as a Prime Minister. He's gone, as any normal citizen would do, he's gone to court to defend his name. And this is totally acceptable.
He's not defending his name, is he?
Of course he is.
Because if the court is independent and is going to do its job,
see what the court says.
Then it would bring out the truth. But he doesn't even want to let it get that far.
You see,
he wants to shut it down before
whether
it can deliver a verdict.
Agree with this or not. Again, this is again in front
of
the court.
Who shuts down a court hearing that would deliver the truth as Prime Minister?
He doesn't.
That's what he challenged it. He wanted to do it. He went to court to appeal against the hearing.
is appealed. You see, you just say that.
Yes,
You
which is a
confirm it.
challenge, isn't it? It's a challenge.
Well, surely courts are allowed, you're allowed to appeal at the court, surely. Or if you're not allowed to do that, then there's no rule of law. If the courts just dish out sentences
Why not
and then you are not allowed to appeal.
It's not a sentence. He doesn't even want the inquiry to take place.
Well, we have to wait and see what the court says.
He doesn't even want the inquiry to take
See
place.
what the court say.
This is the permissive atmosphere in which you get killings of
Oh,
journalists,
you're
isn't
being
it?
very unfair now.
This is
just
a
because
permissive
somebody has-
atmosphere.
because somebody is appealing in front of the courts, then you say that this has led to murders. This is absolutely nonsense. I'm afraid I have to say that.
Nonsense?
Absolutely.
It doesn't show much respect for the rule of law, does it?
On the contrary, because there is a rule of law, you have to go by what is normally allowed to do.
And you use the
laws allow you.
procedures to shut down
No,
investigations.
you're wrong about this. You're allowed to appeal because, like any other citizen. Why not? Because you're prime minister, you're not allowed to do what other citizens do? I disagree.
Minister Chris Fearne, it's been good to have you on Conflict Zone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.